Well, hello and welcome everyone to yet another one of my The Flash videos. Now in this video, I'll be discussing a whole bunch of things. I believe it was teased a month or two ago that a villain from a previous season will possibly show up on the finale. Not sure if that means a major or a minor villain, but I'm guessing I'll discuss both. There's also the HR theory floating around that I want to discuss in detail here because the most recent is supposedly the theory that has a lot of people convinced has way too many flaws to it. But before I start here, I'd like to remind you it is always appreciated if you drop me a like once you're done watching the video, if you end up liking its content, and if you subscribe if you want to see more of my review and theory videos. I'd like to remind you as well to click the sexy bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Now in no way does anything I say here means that we're certain HR did not replace Iris. He might have, and hence he might have been the one to have died. But there's always the chance that is not the scenario the show is going with. Definitive statements cannot be made until we watch the finale, and that is why I'm always cautious to make it clear all options are up for grabs. And the only thing I'm doing here is discussing my own theories and my opinions on existing theories. That is why I usually end up presenting multiple theories as well, because at the end of the day, the outcomes could be completely different than what we think they would be. So based on the penultimate episode of the third season, a theory has been already formulated confirming how HR was indeed the one to die at the hands of Savitar. Now I'm not really convinced of all the points it raised, even though it did seem really convincing to start with, but when you think about it, it does rely heavily on a lot of factors that do not necessarily have to mean Savitar killed HR instead of Iris. Number 1. The use of the face transmogrifier by Barry early on might be a total Easter egg to what was to come, but it isn't necessarily the case. The showrunners wouldn't go to such lengths to keep the ending of the season a secret and make sure it is not leaked to the viewers, only to give it away on the second to last episode of the season with such an easy hint. If anything, that particular usage of the tag by Barry would most probably be all about either tricking us into thinking that is the case, or having us confused with some of us claiming it was such an easy giveaway to be true, and some others believing it was actually true. The second point raised in the theory was all about Iris forgetting the name of the song that her father used to sing while she was young. For starters, that conversation also had personal information that Iris told her father about, like swapping her room with Barry when she was a teenager. I don't think Iris would have decided to give HR that random piece of information to exchange it with her father on Earth too. Besides, I can tell you, and you would probably agree with me, sometimes we forget the names of songs we used to listen to as children, and it takes us donkey years to remember. So Iris forgetting the name of a song her father used to sing or listen to is in no way proof of anything. That moment as well is followed by a very emotional father-daughter moment that I don't believe HR should be capable of faking. So it isn't really that simple or that straightforward. As a matter of fact, this whole scene was kind of emotional from the get-go. We knew there was some sort of a goodbye moment incoming with Joe and Iris. But moving on to the third point in this theory, this is about HR being on the roof ready to shoot at Savitar when Cisco vibed Barry into the future on the winter premiere. Yet Joe ends up being the one up on the roof. Well, there's something very important to consider here when you're thinking of how definitive such an argument happens to be. The first time Barry traveled to the future and watched the whole thing happen, HR wasn't there. Then, by telling Team Flash all about it, HR, who now knows all about it, ends up showing up in that vibe. Back then, Joe had no clue about what's gonna happen. The plan as well was not to tell him anything about all of it. So for Joe to end up on the roof instead of HR, now that the plan has changed, and now that he knows, could make perfect sense considering he's probably the better shooter and considering the future might have once more changed. We can't just accept justifications and explanations the way they are when we like them and they're convenient and ignore them and twist them around when we don't like them or we think they're not that convenient. So if we accepted the fact that HR being on the roof during the vibe was part of a change to the future, then Joe being up there could be considered a similar change. The word could is key here. I'm not saying that is necessarily the case, but I'm saying it is possible and we have to consider it. But moving on to number 4. Iris telling Barry the first time around that she loves him before Savitar ends her life versus her just yelling Barry on the penultimate episode is one proof that makes partial sense. But there are really so many ways to look at it here because all those changes made to the future might have affected that very moment as well. Besides, the whole episode was extremely stressful. Joe was not supposed to know about it, yet in this particular scenario that ended up happening he did. Changing one factor could pretty much change the entire sequence of events, including the final words Iris gets to tell Barry. But moving on to number 5. The claim that HR was switched with Iris from the very start and that it was his plan all along to lead Savitar to him on Earth 2 is extremely flawed at best. For starters, he couldn't have known that Savitar would come into Star Labs and ask about Iris. None of the team realized the guy standing right there was in fact not the real Barry, so giving away the location of Iris was a total slip of tongue there. Besides, let's assume HR switched places with Iris. It would just be so stupid of Iris to have someone sacrifice himself in her place and yet give away his location to the one person who is not supposed to find out so easily. But it also does not make any sense. Even if HR was willing to sacrifice himself, there is no need to actually give Savitar his location and ensure he dies. The sacrifice should only come if push comes to shove and there is no avoiding the inevitable rather than actually creating the inevitable. But the sixth and final point to the theory. The scenes from the sizzle reel where Iris talks to Savitar Barry and has her hand on his face have not aired yet, and hence she can be dead, which means HR replaced her. That is actually the argument that makes the most sense. It makes it kind of hard to believe Iris is dead. But then again, there's a counter argument. It is most definitely not the first time a sizzle reel or a trailer for one of the Arrowverse shows has been released with footage we never ended up seeing on the actual series. It has already happened a few times with Legends of Tomorrow, for example, including the first look trailer of the show where Barry and Oliver were supposed to work on uniting the Legends, only none of them, or at least Barry, had zero involvement. There were all those scenes in that trailer as well where they used the help of Barry at some point dealing with the armies of Vandal Savage, but they never actually did that on the show. So in terms of released trailers, released episodes discrepancies, this is not the first or the last time that would happen. But once more I remind you, it is possible that Iris is still alive, and that HR actually replaced her. Just these points are not proof of any of it. Now, speaking of the promotional photos of the finale, there were a few missing members of the cast. Wally is one, HR is another, and Tracy Brand is a third, but we know she was watching the whole thing from a distance, so she's definitely not the one who died there. But then looking at the promo of the very same finale, it seems HR was somewhere holding a gun ready to snipe Savitar as well, so we might all be wrong to think he replaced Iris, or that there is a chance he did. Unless of course that was some sort of footage meant to get us all confused in doubting all our theories, possibly something they shot with Barry and Cisco's vibe into the future from episode 10. If that were to be the case though, and he was on a close-by roof, that could be what his whole outrage for being useless to the team culminated into, going out with a weapon ready to take out Savitar himself. Now some claim that version of Wells in the promo is Earth 2 Wells, however the hat he's wearing is some kind of dead giveaway it's HR. In that case though, it would seem that Wally is our last option standing as the person who used the tech and replaced Iris, and if you ask me, it is quite possible. Wally has been burdened by guilt since he freed Savitar from his Speed Force prison, and if it makes sense that anyone would want to replace Iris because of guilt, it would be Wally, more than anyone else on Team Flash. I know, this whole thing is a lot of confusing. I'm confused as well, so whatever I'm saying here is no confirmation but rather an invitation for everyone who views this video to participate in the comments and let me know what they think. But let's be practical and keep our options open here for a moment. If no one replaced Iris and Iris was actually killed by Savitar, how would Iris ever make a comeback to the show? There are so many options and possible answers there. For one, they could have a different version of Iris. Remember, the multiverse is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm not a big fan of that option though. Now the second option would be that Barry runs back in time and goes for a do-over of the entire thing, maybe stop Wally before he frees Savitar or tells HR to shut his mouth, and not give away the location they had Iris hiding in. But then again, that would be such a loophole that could be used to fix anything and everything in the show. It would be an extremely dumb move, possibly ruining the finale. Now the third option, and this is one some people won't like, is they could make the whole thing stick. Yes, we're under the impression Candice Patton will be back for the 4th season, but maybe just in a guest starring capacity, like in flashbacks. Now even if she wasn't to come back for the 4th season, the producers wouldn't have let us know that before the finale, or otherwise it would have been a dead giveaway to the failure of Barry to save her and would ruin the finale as well. So the hole in the producers and creators we trust is always good to go with, not because what they say will always be true, but because as well, they might just be straight out lying to protect our right in not having events of the show, and particularly on season finales spoiled. But finally, there could be all the other time-traveling options that I mentioned on other videos that you can check once you're done here. There's the Barry making a deal with the Speed Force, gets imprisoned in it, in return for Savitar being erased from the timeline, and Iris being restored. There's as well Barry sacrificing himself and becoming a time remnant in a dead timeline in favor of the survival of Season 2 finale Barry, who would then be warned never to create Flashpoint, avoiding this whole mess. Yes, the options are endless. Some of them are straightforward and easy, but with a lot of loopholes, and some of them are going to give us one hell of a cliffhanger on the finale as to how everything would be when the show comes back. Now last on my docket for this video is the whole interview I mentioned early on. I think it was with Mark Guggenheim a few months ago. Don't really remember right now. But generally speaking, when it comes to the finale, it has been teased we may end up seeing a villain from the past couple of seasons come to the scene of events. Again, the key word here is may, so just like there's a chance we may see them, there's a chance we may not. The villain could be one of the minor villains over the past seasons, which makes the options endless, and might in this case actually be in reference to Captain Cold's appearance on the penultimate episode. But if the show was to pull an Arrow Season 5-like finale, then they would probably end up bringing one of the two major villains we know so far, just like Arrow's bringing its Season 2 major villain, Slade Wilson, into the fold. In this case, our options are limited to Zoom and Eobard Thawne. And if Barry was the one to bring him into the fold of events, then I would assume it would be the Harrison Wells Reverse Flash and not even the Matt Fletcher version. But then again, there is always the option of the Matt Fletcher Thawne coming back to gloat. I mean, he was there at the beginning of the season, gloating about how it was going to be crappy for Barry. He might just make a comeback for the final showdown to let Barry know he won, and in a sick twisted way, he kind of did win. But with that being said, let me know in the comments what you thought of my theories here and what you thought of my theories on Iris being actually the one who dies. If you think I missed any options or theories that will make sense in this situation, do let me know as well. For now though, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.